All right, thank you for staying with us. We're moving over now to Abuja, where we have Eshoma Moimodu and TJ Suadeoye standing by to take over the conversation for FCT Brief. Good morning, guys. Handing over the conversation to you now.
Good morning, Veronica. It's good to hear from you. We're taking it over from here. A rainy Tuesday morning here in Abuja.
Exactly. And we hope it will not lead to any kind of serious flooding.
Hopefully. That is the prayer, because, you know, what is happening in Mokwa is quite unfortunate. And I don't want, you know, a situation like that to repeat itself. I hope that the government officials have learned from the first mistake and maybe have put some measures in place to ensure that something like that doesn't repeat itself.
And I wish very soon we'll move, very soon we'll move away from we hope, and be able to say we start with certainty that, we're on top of the situation, and exactly that will be the case.
Of course.
Now, let's give you what we have for you. Now, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us on FCT Brief. Now, we are live from our Abuja studio. Now, disaster management is crucial to the survival of every society, but to us in Nigeria, it is a huge challenge, whether it is floods, fires, epidemics, or building collapses. The frequency and intensity of disasters in recent years have raised serious questions about our level of preparedness, response, and recovery. Disasters, both natural and man-made, have become recurring threats in many parts of Nigeria, from the seasonal floods that submerge entire communities in Niger State to fire outbreak in markets across Kano and Abuja. In 2022 alone, over 1.4 million people were displaced by floods nationwide. Emergency shelters were overcrowded, and rescue efforts in some areas were delayed by days. But why do these lapses persist?
While the government plays a central role in disaster management, citizens are the true first responders. Community awareness, vigilance, and training are essential. Disaster management is a shared responsibility. Government agencies must invest in early warning systems, infrastructure resilience, and community education. As climate change continues to intensify weather patterns and urbanization expanding without adequate planning, the risks are growing. Preparedness is no longer optional, it's a necessity. And it starts with you. For instance, the disaster in Mokwa, Niger State, a transit and agricultural hub in north-central Nigeria, is presenting a huge threat to food security. And helping us to take the conversation deeper is the Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security, Senator Sabi Abdullahi. Thank you for joining us in our studio this morning, Honorable
Thank you
Minister.
very much for having me. With a heavy heart, let me say good morning, Nigerians.
Good morning to you. Well, the recent flood in Mokwa has once again exposed how unprepared we are when disaster strikes. Why is it always the same story? Despite early warnings, we see slow response from government. Is it a failure of planning or coordination among the relevant agencies, or will we say this is just pure negligence?
Well, thank you very much. First, let me use this opportunity to express my condolence to those who lost their life in this very unfortunate natural disaster, and to the entire people of Niger State, the government, the former governor, and all the members of his cabinet, and in fact to our dear president also, because this is happening in Nigeria. Our condolences out to those people who lost their life. Now, these are issues that are very delicate, and issues that definitely, like we said, they are disasters. And anytime we talk about disasters, if they are man-made, that is a different ballgame, but these are natural disasters. And I think in the case in point, one thing that has happened is the fact that no one saw it coming, because there were no indications that showed that that place was going to have that kind of volume of water. And I think this is where the delicacy of any disaster management comes in.
So you're saying naturally that plane is not a flood plain?
The plane, well, it has that, you could see the natural, setting, because it's a depressed area. In fact, if you are traveling there, you go down.
So it's susceptible to flooding.
Yes, it's susceptible. It's just this natural susceptibility.
And there was a warning also.
And, well, there was warning that there was going to be massive water.
So?
But where?
So if we were prepared.
So, and within that context, that particular location, they call that area Tifimaja or Ngwa Hausawa. Okay? That area, for the past 100 years, if you ask the citizens of that place, they've never experienced what they saw. It's not as if there was some flooding some 10 years back and then today it's repeating itself. No. And so that depressed area is like a valley. And so a lot of the families along that line are the ones that are now the victims. And if you know the terrain, what has happened is that this water came from, the terrain around that area, from Makwa local government, you now have Mashegu local government, and then Makama local government. Now, these are all linked to each other. And if you know, Mashegu local government is about 9,000 square kilometers. And that is where you have the Zugurma, forest that is part of the Kanji Lake National Park. So it's a collection of very dense forest areas and is an agricultural area. So what has happened here is, if you recall, last year, 2024, there was a massive flood in Sabunfegi, which is the same Mashegu local government. Now, this was from one stream they call Manyara. And the Manyara stream is like a collection of streams in that whole network of area that is a very expansive area. It's a rural setting, a thick forest. Now, what has happened is that in this case, this water must have collected from different streams because of the volume of the downpour and made its way, clearing farmlands on that stretch. In fact, information available to me indicated that up to 5 kilometers from that same, it's because there are citizens here, and from that area where you are seeing it in Makwa town, down into this forest, if you are going in, if you see the path from where the water came, you will know that it was a massive thing, and it was not a natural thing.
So, Honorable Minister,
that is a normal, more or less like a normal.
My question that this is failure of planning, because if you have all this data in place, why is it that the government did not prepare for this ahead of time?
That is not data. You don't call that data. I'm giving you the picture of what has happened.
Predictions.
Okay? And in that area, what I'm saying is that there are no streams that indicated. It's just like water collecting. One thing with water is that if it forms itself into a massive, volume, it must have its way. Okay. And that's exactly what happened. And what normally happens is that if you have that massive volume collecting itself, whichever way that it is convenient for it to pass, it will pass. And like I said, that was a valley. And so that water collected, formed itself into a massive volume, and then made its way through this valley that before they've never seen half or a quarter of it. And what is it? It was going, because from that place to River Niger is about 16 kilometers. So the point I'm saying is that, you see, let's get it clear. We are victims of the impact of climate change. Yeah. This is being said all over. Where the climate, the damage to the climate is being done is somewhere, where the impact is being felt is somewhere. Okay. Because like I said, if this was a natural, for example, the case in the Mayara I was talking about, of course, it broke the bridge, severed the communities last year for about 2 days before, I remember the Minister of Works intervening, and then there was restoration. So the point I think I would like to make here is this. You've asked one question about the field of planning. Before now, there are a lot of things that have not happened. And you agree with me that what the president has said to do is to begin to set things that have been wrong, to make them right, and to see that we now have a clear path to taking our country forward, because everybody is tired of what you have said earlier, hope, hope, hope. Yes, definitely, like you said, renewed hope is here. And within that context, if you recall when the disaster happened in Maiduguri, there has been, concerns about the same subject matter. Now, what has happened is that the Federal Executive Council approved that the Honorable Minister of Water Resources and Sanitation should lead a nationwide effort to address. Because how do you address? By knowing exactly where the issues are. The dams that are there, the streams that are capable of creating problems, and I think that work is ongoing.
Okay.
And you know, if you want, let me land on this. If you want to solve these problems, it's not a quick fix.
Yeah.
Because you cannot predict exactly with precision that, oh, this is going to happen here.
Okay. Honorable Sir, I want us to also take a look at, you just rightly said that the president is looking at the holistic way we can address all these challenges. One critical sector that needed to be looked into is NEMA. Yeah. Now, because like in Nigeria, we don't have the frequency of some disaster like earthquakes and all that. So we're fortunate. Now, flood is what happens seasonally. You have the whole of the dry season to prepare. Because you don't, even if it has not happened for 100 years, if it's on the floodplain, you know that there's a tendency it might happen someday. Yeah. So there should be mapped out plans. Yeah. Now, 4 days after we had a guest here yesterday, a reporter also updated us. 4 days after this disaster, there has not been relief. That kind of intervention. Now, what I'm asking is, NEMA, don't you think we need to relook the whole concept of NEMA? Yeah, Mr. President said NEMA should move in. Even without Mr. President speaking, NEMA should naturally be there. The statement from Mr. President probably will now be an extra capacity being mobilized for NEMA, not necessarily instigating NEMA to go.
No, well, I don't think that is the intention of Mr. President. Yeah. Mr. President has to speak because this has happened. And of course, in speaking, he has to speak to the agency that he has mandated.
Exactly.
But what you should know is that, rightly, NEMA immediately, when they got this, they immediately mobilized. Now, what you need to know is that the operational structure from Mina to Makwa is 4 hours. And when this thing happened, I think you had your guest, I think the Director of Operations Search and Rescue of NEMA, he told you exactly what transpired. New Busa, where you have the National the Air Force, he also told you they mobilized them with the military. Now, even the SEMA, which is the State Emergency Management Agency, they also mobilized. Now, when they mobilized, you see, I'm happy in your earlier report you said Makwa is a transit. If you know the nature of Makwa, you understand that, yes, even when you mobilize and get there, you have a difficult task because people have already been displaced. At that stage, what you are trying to do is to see those who are going to rescue in terms of those who are in difficulties. And I think that has been ongoing immediately it happened. And in terms of the response, both the State Emergency Management Agency and then the NEMA itself, they were all on ground. And together with the community, thank God you said, of course, the community also have a critical role to play. They've all gathered together, working together to see how they can bring this succor. Now, the confusion here, I've listened to this program over and over since it happened. I was also monitoring. Okay. Is the fact that people are concerned about, oh, relief material has not come, this has not come. When you go there, who do you give to?
No, that's also a very critical question. An IDP camp should have been set up by now. We understand that there is no IDP camp.
But yesterday, the director of operations told you there is a primary school that, it depends on the culture of the people.
Minister, they will not want to go to IDP camp. Can you just hold your thoughts there? Let's quickly pay some bills.
All right.
Our major currency unit is the Naira, while the minor unit is the Kobo. They are both in notes and coins. The Naira is more than just a medium of exchange. It bears the images of our heroes. So, stop abusing the Naira. It is a criminal offense to spray the Naira at events. Stop stepping on the Naira. It's not your enemy. Do not squeeze, ruffle, or write on the Naira. Handling the Naira with dirty or oily hands can deface the Naira. Love the Naira as you love yourself. Be a real Nigerian.
This message was brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
We don't like to eat better, more nutritious meals, more veggies, but we want it tasty and easy too. No cubes. That's the secret. Made with real ingredients like chicken, parsley, and garlic. And enriched with iron, so your meals are better for you and more delicious too. That's the cocoa. Let's give it some accolades. Change your world by changing what's on your plate.
Thank you so much for staying with us. This is Breakfast, and you're still watching FCT Brief. We're still discussing disaster management and also government response. I will still have with us in the studio the Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security, Senator Sabi Abdullahi. Thank you for staying with us on the show. Now, I'd still like to still dwell on the report that we got from our correspondent there in Niger State, where he said that IDP camps are yet to be set up, relief materials are yet to be distributed. Well, you said NEMA is currently on ground alongside SEMA. But, you know, being on ground is different from responding to people that are already, you know, in distress.
All right.
Who should be held responsible for this? Is it not a failure of duty on the part of NEMA?
Well, I don't see it as a failure of duty. You see, in a disaster situation, you must definitely have your plan to target those who are most in need. And the items, in terms of the initial response they made, they went with items that were available. And in that, they now need to work together with the local community to see who and who is entitled for these, you know, items that have been given. Like you said, Makwa is a transit camp or a transit town. And if you know the level of people you will see who are in transit around Makwa, it will amaze you. And that same area it happened is just about less than a kilometer to Kanji Junction. That's New Busa Junction. That junction now is where most people who are traveling to Kebbi, Sokoto, that's where they go back to take, because this other road is, you know, still in a bad condition. Now, the point I want to make here is this. From information available to me, what the Niger State government did is to say that, well, this is a national disaster that has happened, and we have two layers of committee. The central, which is under the deputy governor of Niger State, Comrade Yakubu. That is where they collate everything. Then the local committee, made up of the citizens, that is the local, is an area. There are representatives of that area, representative of the district head, and all other interest groups or stakeholders, and alongside with NEMA, SEMA, and all the other people, including the health officials, there is a committee on that. Now, to ensure that due diligence is carried out to give to people, because immediately this thing happened, people definitely have to look for succor in their neighbors and every other thing. That explains why it was difficult to say, okay, if you say IDP camp, you ask people to go to a place. There was a place that was designated, but the people felt, no, they are not going to go there. They have relations, they have other people who are not affected, and they've decided to take shelter in those places. This is the nature of the community, because these are communities that are very, closely knitted, and they will always want to share in the pains or joy of their own neighbors. I think that is why you are not able to see ID camp. But what is important here is that the community are identifying those who are impacted. Work is still ongoing. Even this morning, I spoke to a classmate of mine who is from Makwa, who is a professor, and we discussed. He gave me insight into what was happening. Now, the point I want to make is that at the end of the day, just like the director of operations said, they decided, since the primary school there, nobody wants to go there. That is why even the items, they've taken it to the local government secretariat. You see, if you don't work within the local setting, you are not going to get result. And the local setting is such that there are a number of people who are in transit, who are visitors or travelers. And anytime you are having things that you want to give to people, if you are not careful, those who are even intended to get it will not end up getting it. It is other people who exactly the point. And that is why the people who are in operation there, they have a local committee, and the local committee have set the criteria on how they are going to do this job.
Because there are concerns that, some of these relief materials are even being hijacked by local leaders or maybe some government officials. And now that you're saying that these relief materials have been taken and put somewhere else, what is the what kind of monitoring system?
Yes. No.
You said it has been taken to a secretariat.
That is the safest place to keep it.
Yes. So what kind of monitoring system? What kind of monitoring system is in place to ensure that these materials are not hijacked and also they reach the people that are in dire need of it?
All right. First, what I know is that from the Central Committee under the Deputy Governor, they have their tracking system. Whatever is given is now taken down, because a lot of people will take things to Mina. Okay? Because who do you hand over to? If you go to the local government, who will you go and hand over to? So what they have done is from Mina, they are able to send these things directly to the committee that is locally on ground. And this committee is made up of both NEMA, SEMA, the local community, the traditional ruler. And in fact, this morning, because, like I said, the difficulty there is that a lot of people who are in transit, who have no business, will also want to take undue advantage. And that is a very difficult, task that they are also trying to manage right now. Okay. In fact, this morning, funnily, or I don't even know how to put it, that the traditional ruler was actually angry with some of the people who were not part of those who are affected, to the extent that he was even threatening, if people who are not affected are trying to corrupt what is there, he's going to lay a curse on them. Okay. That's to show you also that beyond government's own actions, the local communities also are very key and they are very important.
Now, Mr. that brings me to another issue, talking about going forward, how to manage rescue operations, because it should be a conversation that we can take deeper. Now, you just talked about the local communities and that they didn't want to go to the primary school. I was expecting that even before now, we should understand the nature of our various communities, what they want, and work with solutions that will adapt with what they want, not what we think we want to bring to them. Absolutely. So that should be what NEMA should be looking at going forward, not how else that what the people want. But closely tied to that is, how does this affect food supply?
All right. Now, I think the issue first is that we must accept that this is not a man-made solution, situation. It's a natural disaster. And information available to me indicated that from that forest where this water aggregated and made a very large volume and moved down, most of the farmlands around that area, of course, are wiped away. But fortunately, this is just beginning of the rainy season. And for Niger, June right now is where they are actually, so it's not as if it is crops that have been wiped away. But what it also spoke to is simply that these issues are deeper and they will require us to continue that conversation and support government in terms of what? Proper information from many communities. Because you see, if you want to understand the hydrological cycle of anything, it must be based on information coming from the locals. They are the ones who are receiving the impact on a continuous basis. That is number one. Number two, you also have to begin to look at our own behavior as citizens, contribution to why these things are happening. Most of these water pathways are blocked deliberately by people because we discard all our refuse into it. We throw so many things there. And so when this water happens to, come around us, they don't have the pathway through which they will continue to move seamlessly. So I agree with you. It's a very serious issue, and I'm convinced beyond reasonable doubt that the measures being put in place in terms of the present scanning of the entire environment, because there is interrelationship in the sense that something could happen upper, and if you look at our various hydrological cycle, something will happen in another hydrological cycle, and it is another one that will be taking the impact. Yeah. So all of these things are being looked at. And I recall just some few weeks ago, the Acrisal project, which is under Federal Ministry of Environment and us, looking at restoration of degraded land and how we can restore all of these, lands that should have their normal waterways while also allowing the farmlands that can be, utilized for farming purpose we should look at that. And one of the areas we are looking at now is water harvesting structures. And I think in terms of relationship to agriculture, that is one of the areas that we are now looking at, that in everywhere, for example, in this place, if there are water harvesting structures along the line, perhaps those waters will have been aggregated and collected in those water harvesting structures, and then it will reduce the volume and so minimize the damage. So I believe there are ways we're going to tackle this, and the effort is not just saying NEMA, because NEMA is looking at emergency. But this emergency is created by who? Agencies that are having responsibility along that are also there. And I think that is why the Federal Ministry of Water Resources is having this very strong mandate. And you know, the Hydrological Services Agency is there. And so when NIMET comes up with these predictions, the Hydrological Services Agency monitors all of these water bodies and how they relate in terms of the kind of things that happen here. And so I believe in all of this whole of government approach and intergovernmental approach, including even local government, then we'll be able to tackle this. And of course, that explains why President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is gravely concerned that it is at the local level that these things happen. Hence the idea, for example, of the autonomy for local government, to allow them also take charge of some of these things. In those days, it is local governments that will drain all the waterways and all the pathways where these blockages are taking place. So I think there is, that plan, and I'm sure we are seeing an early, example, a case study. And I believe very strongly that this is a wake-up call to all people who are involved in it. And as the president will always say, it is about the citizens. And we must work to ensure that we give them
Honorable
the right
Minister, still closely tied to this food security issue. Mokwa is a key maize-producing area, and also it grows rice, sugarcane, yam, and cassava. As the Minister of State for Agriculture, what steps are being taken to cushion the blow on farmers who have lost, their crops? Because I believe there are some farmers that have sown early. Is there sort of like a program or a recovery package that the ministry is putting together to help cushion the effect for some of these farmers?
Well, when things like this happen, it has to be evaluated first, because nobody even knows. I'm the one giving you the story about the fact that in the bush or in the forest where this water emanated for, reports reached us that there are some damages along the line. All of these things have to be evaluated. But beyond that, we need to also understand that the idea of giving the NIMET prediction is to tell people that the farm calendar, people should be guided by when they should, start their agricultural activities and when they should not start, because of some of these challenges that we are seeing. But let me say this. The plan that, or maybe the structure in place, is the National Nigeria Agricultural Insurance Corporation, that is NAIC, to provide that insurance or risk management portfolio for farmers. Now, some work is currently ongoing, because as part of the reform by the president, we've first taken the Bank of Agriculture, which has been recapitalized. Then the NAIC is next in line, because people don't really understand the issue of insurance. Farmers don't really understand. But this education, like you have said earlier, is key. And I think NAIC has started educating farmers on the need for them to understand that there are risks associated with farming. But some of these risks also are very massive, because the climate challenge is key. And I think as a country, our response in terms of looking at climate smart technology, for our farmers is key. And like I've said earlier, we have to turn this negative into an opportunity. And the best way to turn this into an opportunity is by looking at the water harvesting structures, which is what I've talked about. And there is that plan right now. The AgriSal project has been given that mandate based on the report we've gotten from farmers across the production zones, that all of this water, rather than allow it to be a destructive force, we can make it into a productive force by having them collected, and this is being carefully planned right now. Okay. So for those people around the area, I'm convinced beyond reasonable doubt, former Governor Mohammed Umar Bago is fully in the picture, and definitely we'll work together to see how we're going to provide a platform or a framework to give response when these kind of things happen, especially within the context of agriculture. And you know, the state is a large state. 76,000 square kilometers is not, you know, just somewhere you can just walk in the park. And the water bodies in the state is massive. So the tendency for our state to suffer these kind of things are there, and we are going to do whatever we can to understand the movement of these waters in terms of how to provide, you know, mitigation solutions. The Kanji Dam, Jaba Dam, I had somebody say maybe initially, but I'm happy that somebody has corrected that impression because it's far away from this. Kanji Dam is 100 kilometers away from Makwa, and Jaba Dam is 30 kilometers away. But from the point where that water collected, it is a tribute to going down into River Niger.
But also there is a challenge if, for instance, the river in Cameroon, all those things are, the dam is open. They usually have this flooding of the banks.
The Lagdo Dam.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's for River Benue.
So we hope that there are measures already in place so that when it happens, because it may happen this season, and we will not come back and begin to talk about what we want to do.
I want to assure you that given what has happened, all people, that is ministries, departments, and agencies that have responsibility on this have seen what has happened. They are listening, and I know for sure they are going to do something in terms of preparedness. Now, in terms of looking at going forward, like you said, the plan. I agree with you that yes, we have to have a plan. But you know, usually this plan becomes easier when you know the prone areas. Like I said, this is an area that we've never had that experience. And that is the challenge. But in areas where these things happened, I'm sure that measures are being put in place to ensure that there is preparation in terms of getting all of these supplies in those places so that it is the response time. And the response time is a function of if you have facilities or these, you know, materials in place such that you'll be able to move them to the place. Like I said, Mina to Makwa is nothing less than 4 hours. And, you know, the government is doing all it can to make sure that there is transparency in this process, there is accountability. And that's why anything that is being given is given to the Central Committee to ensure that it gets to the people. Because beyond what is happening now, how do you resettle the people? Because you talk about recovery. When you are able to sanitize the place, when you are able to clean up the place and do other things, these are people. Their livelihood is gone. I was told there are some families that only one person is left because of, you know, the devastating impact. And, you know, this is because they were actually right on that particular part.
All right. Honorable Minister, dredging of the River Niger has also been a conversation that has been on over the years. Do you think this has become expedient to reduce the impact of flood as we currently see in these areas?
Well, dredging of River Niger is appropriate, is apt, but I think we need to look at our arterial system, the entire hydrological system in the country. Because like I said, the Manyara River is right there in Mashegu local government. It has so many tributaries. It collects. So, and you know, some of these rivers, it depends on from which point you have this massive collection. And I think if we can focus on those areas, it will be easier for you to clean up these small areas, desilt them. It's about desilting. And I think this is what has happened in Jigawa. And that's why you saw the Jigawa, you know, example is a classical case. It's the same Akrisal with Jigawa state government that has gone in to desilt those waterways. And that's why you see the flooding in Jigawa has substantially reduced. And if anything, it has been turned into an opportunity now because farmers are now able to go back into their artisanal life of fishing on those waterways. And at the same time, water is available for all year-round farming. And today, Jigawa state is taking advantage of that. I think that is the kind of pathway that we are proposing. The Akrisal project is a very important project. It's a World Bank supported project. And we've just had a review, I think about 2 months ago. And I assure you, what I've just said is because we have anticipated that based on the information available about the weather pattern, the volume of water we may be expecting, it was time for us to rethink and re-strategize. And part of the strategy is that they would need to go into this kind of areas. So if we are able to get all those risk or more disaster-prone areas, and there is need for them to be desilted, I think that will go a long way. The River Niger is about enhancing commerce and transportation, while this one is about enhancing the well-being of our citizens. Because if you are able to desilt waterways that will have flooded people, then you have improved the livelihood. And I think Akrisal has done quite well in that. In Jigawa, you remember the Jibia flooding? Yeah. Now that issue has now been taken care of by this same project. So those are the kind of things we are talking about. And I think for me, I'm convinced President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is deeply concerned about this. If you remember his first outing to the United Nations, he talked about flooding in the country while talking about coastal erosion in the south. So these are concerns. And I think if you have leadership that has understood how these things are or what these things are, I believe it is easier for leadership to be provided for those. And those of us who are the foot soldiers, we are fully aware, and within that ambit, I'm the co-chairman of Akrisal, and we understand that, yes, we need to also step up in terms of our response to this
Honorable
issue.
Minister, it's a pleasure. We really enjoyed this conversation this morning, and thank you for bringing clarity into this matter. We do hope that these proactive measures that you have been talking about will be put in place speedily, and people that need this help, get it and get it.
In fact, let me say this. I forgot to mention, the former governor of Niger State, in response, just make
that point in 10 seconds.
Yes, in response, actually has what they call ward development committees to look at some of these teething challenges. And I think this is the time for those kind of things to be.
We'll get the Niger people to come talk more on this.
All right. Thank you so much, sir, for your time with us. Well, that's our package for you here in Abuja. We will now hand you over to our Lagos studio where Veronica and the rest of the crew are standing by to continue with the rest of the show.
All right. Thank you, TJS. Thank you, Eshomomo, for that interesting interview. Back in